Look closely at this number. It is too large for the human brain to comprehend. $1.5 trillion. If you had spent $1 million every single day since the birth of Jesus Christ, you wouldn't have even spent half of this amount by today. This is not the national debt. This is not the military budget. This is the exact amount of commercial real estate loans maturing before the end of this year, 2026. And here is the problem. That money no longer exists. It is January 19th, 2026. While you were watching the elections, while you were worrying about the price of eggs or the latest culture war on social media, the American banking system suffered a fatal internal hemorrhage. The media calls it a correction. Wall Street calls it a cyclical adjustment. It is a lie. What we are witnessing is a mass extinction event. According to official NBER data and my own balance sheet analysis, 200 U.S. banks are technically insolvent this morning. They are dead. They just keep opening their doors like zombies, hoping no one notices the smell. But the smart money, the insiders, the sovereign funds, the billionaires, has already smelled it. They are out. And you? Are you still inside? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what they are hiding. I'm going to deconstruct, dollar by dollar, the greatest financial trap since 1929. We will see why your local bank is likely involved, why office real estate has become a radioactive toxic asset, and most importantly, how to prepare for the final impact. Welcome to Stage 4. Welcome to the ghost crisis. To understand the crime, you first have to look at the victim. Commercial real estate, offices. For 40 years, it was the king asset, safe, stable, the cornerstone of pension funds. They said, safe as houses. But something broke in 2020, and it never got fixed. Remote work was not a blip. It was a structural shift in civilization. Today, in 2026, the actual office utilization rate in major American cities is stagnating painfully at 55%. Imagine you buy a factory, but the factory only runs at half capacity. Yet, you still have to pay for electricity, maintenance, taxes, and the loan as if it were running at full capacity. How long do you last? This is the reality of San Francisco, Chicago, New York. But the problem isn't the emptiness. The problem is the leverage. Follow the math. It is simple, but deadly. Let's say an investment fund bought a tower in 2019 for $100 million. They put $20 million of their own money down. The bank lent them $80 million. That is classic leverage. In 2026, with high interest rates and fleeing tenants, that building generates half the revenue. Its market value collapses. It is no longer worth $100 million. It is now worth $60 million. Do the math. Value, 60. Debt, 80. The owner has lost everything. His $20 million has gone up in smoke. But worse, the bank has lost $20 million. The asset no longer covers the debt. The owner has a rational, almost cynical solution. He hands back the keys. In the US, we call this jingle mail. They mail the keys to the bank, and they walk away. And now, the bank finds itself the owner of an empty tower that is losing money and that it cannot sell without booking a colossal loss. That is the ghost. An asset that sits on the balance sheet for $80 million, but in reality is a black hole. And there isn't just one tower. There are thousands. You might be thinking, too bad for BlackRock, too bad for JP Morgan. They're rich, they can take the hit. Think again. This is where the trap closes on you. The too big to fail banks are smart. Since 2008, they have reduced their exposure to commercial real estate. But the regional banks, the ones where you have your savings account, the ones that finance local small businesses, they gorge themselves. For a small bank, lending $50 million for an office building was easy. It was profitable. It was safe. Today, regional banks hold nearly 70% of all commercial real estate debt in the United States. Let me translate what that means. A bank operates with a capital buffer. It is the money it actually owns to absorb losses. Usually, it's about 10% of its assets. If the bank's real estate portfolio loses 20% of its value, mathematically, the bank's capital is wiped out. The bank is insolvent. Zero. We had a warning in 2023. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic. 3 failures. It was panic. The Fed intervened. They put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. They created the BTFP, an emergency transfusion. But guess what? That transfusion has stopped, and the wound is still bleeding. According to a recent study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, if interest rates stay at their current level, and real estate default rates hit 10%, about 1,200 U.S. banks will have asset values lower than their debt. They are technically bankrupt. Why don't they close? Because they don't sell the buildings. As long as they don't sell, they don't realize the loss. It is the Schrodinger's cat of finance. The bank is both alive and dead. But on January 1st, 2026, someone opened the box. Why am I making this video now? Why not last year? Because we have hit the wall. In finance, they call it the maturity wall. Commercial loans are not like your 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. They are 5 or 10-year balloon loans. At the end, you have to repay the entire principal or refinance. The too-big-to-fail banks are smart. Since 2008, they have reduced their exposure to commercial real estate. But the regional banks, the ones where you have your savings account, the ones that finance local small businesses, they gorge themselves. For a small bank, lending $50 million for an office building was easy. It was profitable. It was safe. Today, regional banks hold nearly 70% of all commercial real estate debt in the United States. Let me translate what that means. A bank operates with a capital buffer. It is the money it actually owns to absorb losses. Usually, it's about 10% of its assets. If the bank's real estate portfolio loses 20% of its value, mathematically, the bank's capital is wiped out. The bank is insolvent. Zero. In 2026, $929 billion in loans are maturing. Add the delays from 2025, and we surpass $1.5 trillion. Here's the owner's nightmare. He took out his loan in 2016 or 2021. Back then, rates were at 0% or 2%. His loan cost him 3% interest. Easy. Today, in 2026, he has to refinance. He goes to the bank. The bank looks at the Fed's rates. The new rate? 7.5% or 8%. There is no scenario where this works. There is no happy end. It is a mathematical impossibility. Thousands of landlords will default this year, not by choice, by mathematics. So, how is the system still standing? Why isn't there panic in the streets? Because they are cheating. The regulators, the Fed, the banks, they are all playing the same game. They call it forbearance. In the industry, we call it extend and pretend. The banker says to the landlord, "Listen, I know you can't pay. I know your building is worthless, but if I foreclose on you, I have to declare the loss, and my bank goes bust. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to renew your loan for a year. We are going to pretend you are solvent, and we are going to pray that rates go down next year." It is legalized accounting fraud. It is exactly what they did in Japan in the 90s. The zombie banks. The result? The lost decade. 30 years of economic stagnation. But in the United States, we don't have 30 years. Because unlike Japan, we have inflation that refuses to die. So, what happens when the dam breaks this year? Here is the contagion sequence. The doom loop. Step 1. The credit crunch. Terrified regional banks stop lending, not just for real estate, for everything. Car loan? Denied. Small business credit line? Canceled. The real economy, yours, is deprived of oxygen. It is immediate recession. Step 2. Urban apocalypse. Buildings are worth less? They pay less property tax. Cities like New York, Chicago, or San Francisco depend massively on these taxes. Less taxes means fewer services. Crime goes up. People flee even more. It is the urban death spiral. Step 3. The confiscation. When the banks fall, the FDIC will intervene. But since they don't have enough money, they will have to print. Or worse, they will use the bail-in. Do you know what a bail-in is? It is when the bank uses depositors' money to save itself. It happened in Cyprus. It has been legal in the US and Europe since the post-2008 laws. Your savings are not your money. It is a debt the bank owes you. And if the bank dies, the debt dies with it. I am not telling you this to scare you. Fear paralyzes. Knowledge liberates. The $1.5 trillion ghost is here. It is real. 200 banks are already dead. What we are going to see in 2026 is the greatest wealth transfer of our generation, from the hands of the ignorant to the hands of the prepared, from holders of paper to holders of real assets. So, what should you do? This is not financial advice. It is historical common sense. First, check your bank. If you have more than the insured limit in a regional bank exposed to commercial real estate, you are playing Russian roulette. Diversify. Second, get out of toxic debt. If credit contracts, cash becomes king for opportunities, but variable rate debt becomes suicide. Third, do not be the counterparty. Understand that if your savings are in a bank, you are lending money to an entity that bet on empty offices. Empires do not die in a day. They die slowly, then suddenly. We have had the slow phase. The sudden phase begins now. Do not be collateral damage to their greed. Stay vigilant, stay liquid, stay informed. This was John. I'll see you on the other side of the crisis. V.